Hi everyone. I'm really sorry for the jankiness of this page. My Substack was not supposed to launch till January, but I decided to bring things forward because there's a lot of things that need to be said with great urgency, and I felt this is probably the time that sharing about my 9 months of unemployment in 2020 would probably benefit the most amount of people. From 2013 to 2020, I was in tech utopia. The company that I was in was a place where people worked hard and played hard. We were a group of like-minded, fun-loving people in a business that we loved. And so even though there were times when I worked incredibly hard, I learned SQL and Python, both on the fly, self-taught. I worked 11-hour days. There was a time when my commute was 3 hours round trip. And there were times also when I pulled all-nighters and weekenders to do proper business analytics, deep dives. So it really wasn't easy, but what made it worthwhile was the community and the ability to trade heels, business suits, and briefcases for messenger bags, hoodies, and hiking boots. Then, in 2019, everything changed. There was a day in November 2019 where the chairman of my company said, life at this company was all life and no work. I don't think that was really fair to the group of people that were there, but I think it reflected a reality that our staff had grown beyond the size of our business and our profit line. And because of that, well, you can imagine it's basically a signal that layoffs were coming. We were in our 30s then, most of us in the company, and we weren't naive. We have seen other companies that did layoffs more frequently than our company did. But because the atmosphere was so collegial, so companionate, so I don't think that we ever thought layoffs were going to be an immediate part of our lives, and it was a big shock. Not long afterwards, the team that I was in restructured. I was moved from one boss to another. And with the boss that I was moving away from, I was the only person who understood SQL, who was able to do business analytics. So I could see the value that I was bringing to that team. And the team I was moving to was a team where I would be one of many. I think what I did would probably overlap with what some of them were doing on that team. And I would be probably last in, first out because I'd be new to that team. And so in my mind, I was thinking, most likely when the exercise happened, I'd probably be one of the people to be laid off. The choice that I made at that point was a hard one, but I decided to resign. I gave more than a month's notice because I was loyal to the team, to the company that I was working for, to my bosses. I didn't want to leave anybody in the lurch just by leaving. But I felt that leaving preemptively was probably the best way to leave in good standing. I think now looking back, I was much younger in years at that time and much younger in the industry. I don't know if I'd have made the same choices today, knowing what I know. But for me then, it was really a matter of what I thought my positioning would be, because I believed that someone who's laid off has that label of being not a good worker, that it might stain my reputation for rehire. And what I wanted to do was to leave in as good standing as possible, keep a good reputation, and put myself in a place where I maximize my chances of rehire once the company restructure was complete. The spirit of teamwork, camaraderie, and friendship, that was with me until the very last day. The team that I was with on site with me. We walked 2 blocks together to a diner and they treated me to lunch. People who hadn't worked with me in years told me this is the end of an era. And everybody told me how much they appreciated all the things I'd done over 7 years. Even knowing how well appreciated my work was didn't keep me from feeling devastated inside. I was asking myself, what did I do to deserve this? If I was really so good, why didn't they move me to a place where I could continue to drive value? During my second year at that company, that was the first year that I had been promoted from a mid-level IC to a senior level IC. I was given a Gold Star Award. That distinguished me as one of the top 2 people among a broader team of 30. I don't know if it was legitimate, but I spent 5 years after that truly believing that I was a superstar. And after I resigned, I didn't have a job, but I was far from free. I was in the middle of preparing my home to provide respite care for foster children, and that was a process that I started 6 months before I left. So I was still snowed under day after day, but whenever I took a breather during the weekends, I went to the neighborhood where my former company was, and sometimes I would walk around it in tears. I was still trying to come to terms with why I was placed in that position. And 18 months even after that, I continued to eat breakup ice cream every night for that company and for that team, even after I'd been hired into another job that was a step up and a 20% pay increase from what I had held before I was unemployed. What I missed was not just having a job or having a career, but working in such a happy and collegial environment. Because of that, over 2 years, it was one of the factors that caused me to gain 9 kilograms. Looking back on that journey, where I've been trying to go back, but never managed to, I've learned a number of things, and I'd like to share them with you. At the time when I left that company without something lined up, I thought that I'd probably take 3 or 6 months, and then there would be a position which I could apply to, and I'd be hired back. I never imagined that it would take me 9 months and hundreds of job applications, of which I only received 2 interviews before I found another job again. Lesson number 1 is that superstar once doesn't mean superstar forever. When you're junior, it's really, really easy to be a superstar. Expectations are low. As a mid-level IC, I was speedy, accurate, and independent, and those 3 things were enough for me to be killing it. Now I know that what I took from that year 2 Gold Star Award was the wrong message. I thought it meant I was a superstar, a top performer in the company, when really what it meant was that I was killing it at that level. But then as I took on more responsibilities, as I clocked more years at the senior IC level, just being those 3 things, that wasn't enough to take me to the next level. Lesson number 2, layoffs can happen to amazing people. The pandemic hit my former company really hard. There were people who were miles ahead of me in terms of both technical expertise and their years of experience and their career seniority. And none of those things were enough to prevent them from being laid off. They've come back. Some of them have had to come back more than once, but they've done it anyway. Seeing that happen to some truly awesome people in my network, that taught me that layoffs aren't a meritocracy. They also aren't a death sentence to your future employability. They may not be even an end to your employability at the same company. I've had some data points in my network recently that prove this. Lesson number 3, reskill every 5 years. My former company has been changing very rapidly. It has to keep up with technological shifts that are happening at warp speed in the industry. The way that marketing and analytics are being done there today are night and day different from what I was taught to do 12 years ago as a mid-level IC. By the time I left, I was already seeing this. The people who are being hired to do analytics roles, they had a lot more paper qualifications than I and my peers had. They had degrees that certified officially their capability, first to do Power BI, Tableau, and SQL, and then subsequent batches added on statistical methods and machine learning to that too. There was no way that I could catch up in terms of structured instructions or certifications. That would need me to go back to university to spend 5 to 6 digit numbers on tuition and to spend 2 years of my life going back to school, only to come out and start all over again at the bottom of the analytics career path. Becoming a fresh master's grad for the 3rd time in my life, doing fresh grad jobs, working my way back up from the bottom the 3rd time around at age 42, that was not a practical path for me, but it was still possible for me to continue working on my foundations. I'd been dabbling in Python, doing what we now call vibe coding, years before that even became a thing. I'd been taking my colleagues' code and reverse engineering it and modifying it so that I could apply it to a very specific use case. I had to submit daily bit multipliers across a bunch of points of sale, and I was doing that work at night manually in Excel after working hours. And I was like, look, I'm really tired of this. I don't want every night to be a race of how quickly Hui's fingers can work. And so I was looking for a way to automate this, and I didn't know any Python. And I just reverse engineered whatever code I could get my hands on in order to get that done. But doing it scrappily that way, I knew that it would limit my ability to turn around such outcomes and do it at scale, because I didn't really know how Python worked at all. I was just trying to repurpose the parts of it that fit a specific use case. So I did 2 Coursera courses, one in Python and one in data science, in order to get some fundamentals and take a peek at what was under the hood. And after I did that, I finished all my homework and then some. I gave myself extra credit tasks, going through Kaggle, analyzing different data sets, just practicing and sharpening my saw on SQL. I posted 2 sets of free online materials on my blog, the Survival SQL and the Pandas for Productivity series. That was because I knew that I didn't have the time to do this sort of upskilling when I was employed. I'm pretty sure that my peers who were employed, they wouldn't have the time to do that too. So what I was doing there is to try to curate which are the concepts still in a structured fashion that helps you to understand the fundamentals of things, but cutting to the chase of what's most useful within a work context without having to start all over from scratch, from hello world, and work your way up from there. By the time I got my next job, I was able to turn around SQL queries with 5-6 subqueries, things that used to take me a whole day to complete, 2 to 3 times faster, maybe even more times faster than I used to do when I was on the job. That made me even more able to do double duty as a performance marketer and a business analyst, and to do it at the standard that was required to keep up with the people who had all these fancy master degrees. Furthermore, I was able to do that with public proof of what I was able to upskill to on my blog. Now, 5 more years have passed. The goalposts have changed again, and what I achieved then isn't enough anymore. Now, I need to learn how to use LLMs, how to leverage Gen AI, how to build agents. I'm only 1/3 of the way there in week 6 of a 4-month structured reskilling journey. Lesson number 4. Staff plus people have to keep driving growth. My bosses used to tell me that my sense of ownership was the thing that they appreciated the most about me. And I was that person who was so dedicated to my job that I would keep every single corner, check every number, keep every line of code perfect. And they weren't wrong. I still think that has value. It's just that banking on that superpower is only enough to keep me killing it through the level of senior IC. After 5 years of mid-level leadership roles, after I've gone through 2 cycles of turning staff-size problems into senior-size ones, I realized that what it takes to succeed as a senior is really different from what it takes to succeed as a staff plus. When you're doing business as usual in a stable and well-optimized environment, all you really need are mids and seniors. When you're staff plus, you really need to be doing things that move the needle. You need to be either growing something new or exploring something that nobody knows about or turning around a really messy P&L. And that means that you can be doing everything right and you'll still work yourself out of a job probably every 2 years. This was the situation that I found myself in when I decided to quit my 9-to-5 in August. I had chased 2 staff level problems in my company. I turned them both into senior sized ones. And so I wasn't seeing a place where I would be moving towards director rather than moving towards mid and senior. And I had to cut myself loose and find the next opportunity in order to keep growing. Lesson number 5. Understand not only the demand, but also the supply for your skill set. During my unemployment in 2020, I was at the turning point where I hit the max of senior IC and at the beginning of lead level IC. It was hard for me to find jobs at that level. And so what I did was I applied for every single job that had a business analyst title or a product manager title that was at all the levels at and below where I was. Senior, mid, junior, I did it all. That was why my job application count during those 9 months went into the hundreds. I guess that really isn't a surprise because junior to mid-level jobs is where a huge volume of job recs is. Pursuing a volume-based strategy, it didn't help. I thought it would, but I got the reverse result of what I thought I was going to get. As I got more and more desperate, here's what happened. I started with just senior roles, and then when I didn't get interviews, I went to senior and mid-level roles, and then finally to senior, mid, and junior level roles. That meant I was getting more and more applications out there, and yet in more than 6 months, I only had 1 interview. My logic then was that if I'm not getting interviews by meeting the number of years of experience on the job rec, well, maybe I'll get it if I beat it. And if I beat it by more and more and more years, somebody's going to realize that, hey, I can kill it in this role, and that's when I'll finally get an interview. I think I know why that strategy was flawed. It was because I was sending job applications into areas where there was a ton of demand, a ton of requisitions, but at the same time, there was also a ton of supply. I wasn't doing anything to prove that I would be a better junior or mid-level analyst than someone with the right degrees and the right years of experience. Eventually, the job that I was hired into wasn't even a job that I actually applied for. I applied for a mid-level product manager job at that company. and I got hired for a role that hadn't been posted yet. It was a senior manager role that was at the same substantive grade as the job that I had left, but with the added scope of people management responsibilities, and it gave me a 20% pay bump over what I had last been earning. And the reason why I was a killer candidate for that role because I had the technical capacity to drive the change that they were looking for. I had people management chops from a previous point in my career, and the pay band that I was at put me at the senior manager sweet spot. So I was bringing those skill sets at senior manager level that normally would sit in people who had a couple years at director level. I didn't recognize the significance of that scarcity, that unique fit is really so important to getting hired until now when I'm going through the same process 5 years later. I'm looking at the jobs that I applied to in the last 6 months. Who rejected me? Who has been willing to give me a chance in an interview? And just thinking through that and figuring out what worked and what didn't. And so with the 5 things that I learned 5 years ago, this is a different environment today. And I'd like to share what are the 5 things that I'm doing differently in 2025 versus what I did in 2020. Although I now consider myself as retired with optionality, which means that I'm fully aware my next opportunity to make a difference may not be as an FTE in a formal company anymore. I think I've spent enough time in the job market of 2025 to get an idea of the dynamics and to form a few leading philosophies. And I'd like to share them with you in case they are useful to you. Philosophy number 1 is to understand your structural fit with the industry and the company. If you were laid off, or if your role was restructured, or if you're not seeing your next promotion pan out in front of you, sometimes it's not just about your technical capability. Technically, professionally, you could be amazing, but what's happening is that the way your company does business has changed, or that what it takes to win in your functional area has changed. And being able to understand that, it helps you to see what you need to work on and where you need to be moving. I'm going to give you 2 examples of how that has played out in my life in 2025. Case number 1 is that the industry is now doing things differently from how you did them. For 10 years as a performance marketeer, I've killed it by working with click-based attribution models. But now, people are really ad savvy. People don't click on ads anymore because the ad radar has gotten better. And people are getting more privacy savvy. So more often than not, they're killing off third-party cookies. So as a result, the way that we do paid media marketing has to evolve. Companies are testing into marketing mix modeling, running incrementality tests. All of these things are imperfect, and we have to test and learn our ways into driving success. And the people who are able to drive nonlinear growth in their companies using these types of marketing measurement methods, they are the people who are going to be killing it in the performance marketing job market in the future. Case number 2 is that the company you're applying to has a different business model from what you've operated in. During the spring and the summer, I applied to one job and I got called up for another. And both jobs were with startup-y, high-growth companies. The one that I applied to was director level. It was a performance marketing job, and I applied to it because it was ranked number 1 of the jobs in the market at that time, which LinkedIn thought was a match for my profile. Job number 2 was senior manager level. A recruiter called me up, and the only reason why I didn't pursue that job was because I thought that by staying loyal to my boss and to my company at the time, I would have a higher chance of being promoted to director in 12 months because I was working with people who knew me. The first job that I applied to hung onto my CV for a month before sending me a rejection email. At that time, I took that as a signal that the market is telling me, Hui Yi, you're not ready to be a director yet. your level is senior manager and it doesn't matter that you've spent 5 years in this space, you're just not there yet. And maybe that's true, but I found another reason. When I looked at that pattern across another 3 more roles that I'd applied for, which resulted in 5 applications and 1 interview, a 20% application to interview rate, I realized that there's a pattern in context. There's even a pattern in the context of why I went for that interview and eventually didn't move forward. The pattern was that, are these companies operating in the space that I've been operating before? And am I speaking their language? So the growth company that rejected me, if they really thought that my skills and my experience were so far off the mark, I would have gotten that rejection email on day 2 instead of on approximately day 31. So it wasn't really about whether tactically I could do the job. It was about the fact that there's a pattern amongst the 3 companies I've been working at, and it's that they are all two-sided platform companies. They are similar in business model to the company that called me up. A business that's based off of a physical product. It's got different areas of advantage. It's going to approach paid media differently in its strategy than a platform-based company whose value prop is more ephemeral, who has more competitors. And so even though the mechanics of doing paid media are pretty much the same, the strategic approach is going to be different. And that's really important at the senior manager and director level. The second philosophy is lead with relevance. At the beginning, when I started applying in the market, I was really doubling down on how many years of experience I had, what was the seniority of my titles. This was a reflex action because I was getting in my LinkedIn message inbox pings from recruiters for marketing specialist roles, basically mid-level IC roles that would take me back in the clock 10 years. I wasn't understanding that some of these pings might actually just be automated and might not even be looking at really the number of years or what I'd achieved at all. Anyway, I was feeling very, very frustrated. I was feeling career capped. And when I read a couple articles in Business Insider, initially I reacted with a really strong sense of outrage. Over the course of October, there have been a series of press articles that were talking about how hiring managers in 2026, they are going to value AI skills above your degrees, above your experience, and then carrying on to elaborate that curiosity and grit are the 2 things that's going to matter most, and your credentials and leading with experience isn't really going to matter that much anymore. And at that time, I thought, hey, this is just ageism in disguise. But then I sat down. I looked at the roles that people in my network were pushing on LinkedIn. I looked at the roles that recruiters had called me up for. I tried to process why did that roles have a max of 5 years work experience in the market. And I started thinking about what is it that really is different in the last 5 years versus, the whatever years that there were before it. That's when a light bulb came on for me. It wasn't necessarily a judgment call that older workers are worth less, but it is a reflection that the way that businesses, especially online businesses, have been shaped has really transformed in the last 5 years. 5 years ago was the pandemic. It drove lots of businesses online. Everything that was offline had to go online. And then now, with the commercialization of Gen AI, the way that people interact with the internet, that's changing. And the kids who used Gen AI to write essays in school, they're probably the people who've spent the most time with Gen AI interfaces. So that was when I realized that my career strategy has to change. I'm not saying that resumes aren't important. In fact, they are very important. And I think career coaches and resume coaches do play an important role. But on top of that, we need to think broader about the industries that we've been working in and how businesses in those verticals are evolving. And we need to show that we are taking steps to move along with where the market is moving. It's hard. It's very, very hard because traditional hiring is titles-based. There's still a lot of prejudice around looking at whether you've had career progression. Throwing out the notion that every title has to be higher than the one that came before it. Taking the plunge to say that maybe that's what it needs to get me my next job. I hope it's not going to backfire on me in the end. Philosophy number 3 is choose growth companies. People like me, Gen X and early Gen Y, we were taught by our parents and teachers, chase the big names in the industry. It's about prestige, I think, but it's also about recognizing excellence and trying to go after it. I used to do it because I thought those are the places where I can learn the most, and those are the places which can really supercharge my career trajectory. But when I hit my 40s, my mindset changed. I realized that you can't be a forever student once you hit that age. That's the point when I had to switch from learning from the best to helping others get better. And so I jumped from big names to mid-sized names. And in that process, I was getting more responsibility and able to drive tangible improvements. And that was great. It gave me 5 more years where I was more engaged, more enthusiastic, and more knowledgeable about my area of expertise than before. Except now, I've hit the top of the S-curve too. The pace of technology has outstripped my ability to stay in the industry and still be a mentor instead of a student. I need to go back to basics. I need to start learning again. Only after I stepped out and I talked to people, I look at what jobs there were in the market and I realized, oh my goodness, I had no idea when I was stuck in the tactical grind of my previous day-to-day, how much the broader industry landscape has shifted. That's why I believe that in the context of 2025, it's the growth companies that are the ones which need people and which can give concrete career traction because they are the places where people can move the needle. Big name companies may be trimming down, but when you're looking to do things that aren't routine, those are the places where a subject matter expert can make the most difference. And if you're looking at anyone who's holding an exec level title in tech, you'll find that most of the time, their CVs are a salad of companies. They've probably got a little bit of each. High growth, smaller companies, big names, and sometimes even their own entrepreneurial ventures. I would say that looking at big name company experience, take a process over prestige approach to it. It's a great place to learn, a great place to know what's cutting edge. But jumping around companies of different sizes, taking the chance to transfer that knowledge on to other organizations, that's really a necessary step to making that part of your personal brand. Philosophy number 4, leverage your network. This is going to be the most controversial thing I'm going to talk about today. And it's not even a thing that I really like to be talking about because I believe that opportunities should be open to all. I hope that someday our system is going to change and we're going to achieve a more level playing field in this area. But for now, Gen AI is really clogging up the hiring system. When a bot is able to tweak a resume and to send it into an application system in a matter of mere seconds, I don't think it's a surprise that probably every electronic job rec out there is getting thousands of applications within the first couple of hours. What's more, I think this is creating a very real problem for hiring managers and for recruiters because it's really, really hard to tell which of these resumes is genuine and which ones are fake. And in the meantime, Gen AI is also doing another thing. It's reshaping the ways that we search for information, the ways we buy stuff, the ways we create ad content, the context that businesses, especially internet-based businesses, have to operate in. That has changed into a level that nobody can say they have a past strategy that worked and they can copy paste that strategy and it will work just as well in the new context. And what that means is every hire, especially in e-commerce and tech, is going to be a leap of belief. The hiring manager is going to have to take that leap of faith that this person is going to be able to take what they had before and they're going to be able to shapeshift that into what it takes to win in the new world. And at the same time, none of us really know what it takes to win in this new world because it's so new to all of us. And because of these two things, hiring now is becoming riskier and riskier. And that's why network is maybe the one thing that can de-risk the possibility of hiring us. For one, the person who actually knows you, they are the person who will tell the hiring manager, hey, this person is real. And for another thing, they are the people who have benefited from your work in the past. They are going to be the ones who can advocate and say, this person has done great things. I think they'll do greater things in the future. Philosophy number 5, be as flexible as your priorities will allow you to be. I'm not asking anyone to throw their non-negotiables out the window. It's really hard because personal, professional priorities, they're very complex. People are going to need to make different trade-offs based on what they need and what the people they love need. And there's really no winning formula right now in a world where we're getting more and more constraints. Currently, I'm living in a tech hub. And one of the things I was hoping to achieve by quitting my 9-to-5 was to free myself up so that I could move to locations that were closer to people who mattered to me in my life. And those locations are not traditional tech hubs. But after I figure out where the market is shifting, I've realized that my situation, like everybody else's, is constrained. If I want a job in the new economy, there's no guarantee that it won't tie me into a location where I have to defer the moves that I want to make geographically. But why would I make that trade-off? It's because at this point, what's really important to get a foothold in an economy that's incorporating Gen AI and agentic AI is to get professional experience rapidly in a business context, deploying these technologies. If that's what's going to make my next 20 years more productive, I've really got to think hard about whether I ought to incorporate that amongst my personal priorities. I have no idea right now what my final choice is going to be. I don't even know what options are going to be open to me. Right now, I'm a work in progress. I'm still in the process of getting credentials. And once those are out, I think that's when I will be able to see live in the market what doors they may or may not open for me. But I do know that some of my former non-negotiables may be tested. And I know that I may have to make some hard prioritizations and trade-offs. So in summary, please be kind to yourself. Please forgive yourself if you're eating breakup ice cream for a job that you loved. But also know that these things, they're business. They're not personal. They shouldn't impact upon your sense of self-worth. And please know too that there are people in the academic space, in the consultancy and advisory space, who are very aware that right now the job market and career ladders are very broken as a result of the role that Gen AI and agentic AI are playing. And they're bringing people together to have conversations about what this means and what we should be doing about it. I know because I've been working with some of these people entirely without pay, just because I think it's really important to restore jobs and to restore career trajectories in the market. So take care of yourselves, take a deep breath, and keep the faith. This is not the first time we've seen disruption in the economy. Before this, there was the dot-com crisis, there was the subprime crisis, and there was COVID. And just like all those times that came before, I believe that there'll be a time when the trends that were unhealthy will reverse and that the economy at some point is going to bounce back. We just need to be prepared to weather this storm together. If you've stayed with me thus far, thank you very much. and I look forward to seeing you next time.